So there we go. We are all set to record. And you all can still hear me okay?
Yes.
Fantastic. Yes. Like I said, I love to see the thumbs up. That really does help me. When I don't see anything, I thought, okay, that's not actually working. Well, as Dr. Smith indicated, yes, I actually do have several roles in the library, and I may actually have worked with one or more of you at one time or another, maybe in some of your other SLIM courses, through email or maybe through another type of Zoom research appointment. Before we go any further, I do want to emphasize again something that Dr. Smith did say. As you know, I am your librarian liaison for SLIM, and I am so happy to help you with any questions that you have. I love to make research appointments. Sometimes email can work in terms of answering a question, but quite frankly, I really also enjoy doing these types of research appointments through the same system that we're using right now, Zoom, because it makes it so easy for us to share our screen back and forth. And sometimes we can solve a question on searching a database or doing research just within a few minutes. So that's my quick plug. Please always feel free to contact me. I'm pretty easy to find at ckane1@emporia.edu. And then absolutely, I'm happy to help you with any information need. Well, as Dr. Smith also indicated, yes, one of the roles that I have in the library is assessment. And this is something that I actually kind of fell into. I didn't start out with particular idea that I would be doing a lot of assessment at the library, but also, as he indicated, things have changed so much with public libraries, academic libraries, what have you. We are increasingly accountable to a lot of different people and a lot of different organizations nowadays. In a public library, we are accountable to a library board or a library board of trustees. In an academic library, we are indeed accountable to our higher administration that determines our university budget for every year. And so we have to become good stewards of the way that we use our resources for collection development and collection management, both print and online. Now, you all are perfect examples of some things I'm going to be talking about tonight. One of my responsibilities as a liaison for SLIM is to continually visit and continually be in touch with the SLIM faculty. And I'm always asking questions, and I hope I do ask enough questions on being able to say, what's changing in your curriculum? How can we help you? How can we help you get the information out to the students that are not physically in Emporia? Something I do want to emphasize too, because I sometimes think that we don't necessarily think about this. Even the students that are in our Emporia cohort group are, in a very real sense, distance education students. We do not really have a lot of SLIM students who might live physically in Emporia. We have a lot of students, even in the Emporia cohort group, in the Overland Park group, that will drive in just for their weekend intensive classes, just like you all will drive, and then they'll go home. So what that means is that over the years, I've been a liaison for SLIM for probably going on about a decade now. And what I have really needed to do is be aware of the fact that, okay, you're not physically in Emporia, so is it really going to do much good for us to continue to grow a print book collection and a print journal collection for students who don't necessarily have access to that, and for faculty that don't necessarily have access to that? I have to do the same thing for my other two departments with whom I am a liaison. I'm also the liaison for the Department of Psychology and also the Department of Counselor Education. So what's happening in those areas is that in psychology, again, is moving a little bit more away from print books and print journals. They're going more toward electronic access to information, and they're going a little bit more toward journals and other books that might deal a bit more with evidence-based practice. So I have to be aware of that move. With counselor education is a mixture of undergraduate and graduate students in rehab counseling, art therapy, and so forth. A lot of their students also are not necessarily residential here in Emporia. And in fact, this is kind of an interesting piece of trivia. The Department of Counselor Education isn't even on the Emporia State University campus. They are a few blocks away in another building that was given to ESU a number of years ago. So the students that are in the counselor education program are not physically in the library. They're going to class in their building off campus, and then they go home. So again, I have to be very aware of that. And if I recommend that we need to purchase something, one thing that always needs to be very foremost in my mind is, are the students actually going to be able to get access to this? Or am I buying something, or am I recommending that something be purchased that will never be used? So what I thought I would do tonight is go over some ways in which I deal with electronic collection development and online collection management issues. I'm going to show you some different ways that I look for usage statistics and access to these materials. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the recommendations that I take to our Dean, Michelle Hammond, on how we can, again, be good stewards of our information and what will work for the departments with whom I am a liaison. And when I finish, I definitely would love to have any questions that you have, anything that we can address. I'm also going to cover a little bit the idea of OER, or open educational resources, open access, not only for textbooks, but also for e-journals, and how that really impacts a lot of what we do in terms of collection development. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. And I thought what I would do first is go in here. You're going to see one window first, and then I'm going to switch over very quickly. So are you all now seeing a screen that says Reimagining Reference in the 21st Century? Okay, awesome. I saw those thumbs up again. That really helps. Well, something that we get asked quite a bit by a lot of our undergraduate students, and I can understand this, a lot of our undergraduate students will say, well, do you have any ebooks in the library? Do you have any electronic books? The answer is just a little bit more complicated than a simple yes, we do, or no, we do not. And what I've done here is I'm going to show you two examples of ebooks that we own in the library. But as I go into them, I want to show you different ways of accessing these and what we have to be aware of before we give a very simple answer to our patrons that would be, yes, we do have ebooks and you can get access to them. I'm sure that most of you, if not all, are very comfortable with things such as borrowing ebooks, maybe from your public libraries. Here in the state of Kansas, the State Library of Kansas has a very robust ebook program, which is through a cloud library, and I love it because I have a free library card through the state of Kansas, and all I have to do is just go into Cloud Library with my Kansas library card. I can search for popular books, and then I can read them on my Kindle using the Cloud Library ebook reader. And I have to admit, I do a lot of that anymore. I still read print books, but I also love the portability of being able to read something on my Kindle and have it checked out. So, I mean, I'm a total convert when it comes to that. The deal with that, though, is it is so easy to read popular ebooks, popular fiction, popular nonfiction, on our Kindles, on our tablets, or other devices, that the assumption can be made that all ebooks are that easily and readily accessible, and that anybody can take a look at them. There's no problem whatsoever. Unfortunately, that is not the case. And I'm going to show you two examples of two ebooks that we have through the library that have very, very different ways of accessing. So the first one we're going to look at is this one. And this is a book that I found. It's an ebook called Reimagining Reference in the 21st Century. So it was published in 2014, but it's still a viable book. Tykeson and Dove are the editors. It was published by Purdue University Press, but here's the fine print. This is actually an ebook that is available through a database called Project Muse. And Project Muse is also a full-text database of a lot of current scholarly journals. So we actually do subscribe to Project Muse through the library. And because we do, we actually do have access to a number of quote-unquote free ebooks, free meaning that we're paying for them through our subscription to Project Muse. but we have downloaded the records to the ebooks that we do have available through Project Muse. We've made those available in our catalog, and this is a good example of one. So I'm going to click on Online Access. Hopefully I haven't timed out by this point. I'm good. So I want you to look on your screen on the way that this ebook actually needs to be accessed. So we're going to go down here, and basically what I do is I actually already downloaded a chapter here, but if I want to read this book, I have to go in, take a look at each chapter. Let's do Guiding Learners for Information Literacy. And I literally have to click on Download, and then I can read each chapter separately. So that is just a little bit different with the Project Muse access than actually being able to read, like I said, a popular book of fiction or a popular book of fiction online through a service such as Cloud Library. Because as you know, with a lot of those, you can just basically read those on your tablet, and then you just, swipe left or swipe right to kind of page through each chapter. So you're literally paging through, but then you're just sort of swiping left or swiping right with your finger. Can't do this with this. I kind of have to decide what it is that I want, and then I can go back and look at each chapter separately. Let us compare this to our second one. And I'm using this one as a very deliberate example because I want to show you what can happen, again, if you are a public library, or in particular an academic library, and you're thinking about investing quite a bit of money into ebooks to make it easily accessible to your patrons. So this second one is a book called Online Searching, A Guide to Finding Quality Information Efficiently and Effectively. Now, it turned out this one may sound familiar to you because it's actually been used as a textbook for other SLIM classes. And I worked last year with Dr. Sarah Sutton, which I'm sure you all know, on getting access to this ebook for her students in one of her classes. Well, this is what we found with this one. So I can click on PDF full text, or I can click on this link. Now this looks a little bit different than the Project Muse ebook, doesn't it? So let's go back. This is what the ebook looks like in Project Muse. And this is what an ebook looks like through a service called EBSCOhost. EBSCOhost is also the vendor or the service provider for a lot of our databases, including library, literature, and full text, and then also library and information science sources, some databases that you've already used. So this one is actually provided through EBSCOhost. And because the service provider is different, the interface looks completely different from the Project Muse one. And here's the fine print that I have to look at. And this is going to go in just a second to something that we're actually going toward now in terms of electronic collection development, particularly for SLIM. With this particular EBSCOhost ebook, when we purchased this, probably about a year or about a year and a half ago, we wound up actually purchasing it. And when I say purchase, I mean we have access to it. We didn't actually purchase the ebook in perpetuity. So what we have here is we have a limited user access for this specific ebook. We have 3 copies that are quote-unquote available as an ebook, which basically means that up to 3 concurrent users at a time can read and access this ebook online. If all 3 users are still logged in, user number 4 tries to get into the ebook, they're going to be turned away. There are ways of keeping track of turnaways as well and usage statistics, and sometimes we look at those. Well, that's okay if you had just one section of a course. But SLIM is a little bit different because we have so many cohort groups, including yours. It is not uncommon to have multiple sections of the same course running concurrently, same semester, sometimes even the same weekends. So because of that, this limitation of limited user access may not be where we need to be going in the future. Maybe we need to start looking for ebooks that have more of an unlimited access. Now that's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it also means that we have much less chance of having technical difficulties or a turnaway. Something else that will happen with ebooks, they often will show you within the record, but you have to know to look for this. This is something you want to be aware of as information professionals. You have to look at what the publisher permissions are going to be. If the publisher of that ebook is going to allow a patron to print or email or save any pages from the book, and if that publisher is going to allow any copying and pasting. So this one says that I can print or email or save a total of 60 pages. People do find ways of working around that, unfortunately, but there is a limit. So I can't actually download the entire ebook and then save that and then have that accessible indefinitely. It looks like there is restricted copy and paste. I would probably have to dig down a little bit deeper to see what that restriction would be. But the reason I wanted to highlight this to you is that, again, saying that we have ebooks in our collection for people to look at, it's a little bit more complex than, again, just saying yes we do or no we do not. Sometimes my answer, unfortunately, to patrons, to students and the faculty can be, it depends. What are you looking for? Let's look at the access. Let's see what the publisher is allowing. Let's see what the database provider or the vendor is actually providing. And I do like to use those two examples because this kind of goes into something else that I wanted to show you. So we mentioned that one of my responsibilities is keeping track of usage statistics of databases and in particular e-journals. So we talked about ebooks a little bit. I'm going to switch topics now and I'm going to look at e-journals next. Electronic journals. I am sure that all of you, again, have used different databases such as library and information science to find the full text in PDF of journal articles. You may also have used some of our other electronic journals, maybe without totally realizing it. And I'm going to open up another tab here and take this tab back to the library's webpage. Okay. And are you all seeing the library's webpage now? Okay, great. Okay, so this may look familiar, but then again, it may not. If I want to see if the library has access, not necessarily to an article at the article level, but I'm more interested in seeing if our library has access to a specific journal in library and information science, and if I can read it online, I would want to go to the Journals tab. And I'm going to type in one that I know that we do have, which is Journal of Academic Librarianship. So our Journals tab is actually powered through another software program that we have that's called Browsine, and that's why you see Browsine up here in the upper left corner. And what I like about Browsine is it actually facilitates our access to electronic journals and databases that have full text of journals. It's a little bit more of a visual way, and it's very easy to navigate. So when I typed in Journal of Academic Librarianship, I'm searching right now just at the journal level, and I want to see if our library has electronic access to the Journal of Academic Librarianship. And I have a little blue icon for a book, which is a good sign. And Browsine will allow me then to look at any current issues that the library subscribes to in terms of online or electronic journals, including the Journal of Academic Librarianship. So the latest issue that is available here is Volume 45, Issue 3 for 2019. So this is just like browsing through a table of contents. Very easy to do. This looks kind of interesting. So I can click on Download PDF, and I can go ahead and read the PDF online. And I'm doing this for a couple of different reasons. We'll let this load. Looks like it's going to be a little bit slower because it's trying to load a PDF. So two things will happen, hopefully, in just a second. Number one, it should go ahead and load the entire article in PDF so I can read it, I can download it. That will look very familiar to you. There we go. But there was something else I wanted to show you here, and Dr. Smith will be very familiar with this as well, because this has actually been in the news quite a bit lately. So we're not even going to look at the PDF right now because I want you to look at something else. I mentioned that this is an electronic journal. This is an electronic journal subscription that we have through a publisher called Elsevier. And some of you may be familiar with some of the recent things that have been going on with Elsevier, and I believe it's the University of California, which recently canceled its Elsevier Science Direct subscriptions because they were just getting too incredibly expensive. These are very, very expensive. Subscribing to electronic journals can be tremendously expensive for a library. Print journals are expensive enough, but with electronic journals, you're paying for access, you're paying for knowledge, but you don't necessarily want to deny your patrons that access to knowledge. So Elsevier makes its electronic journals available through something called Science Direct. So in Science Direct, we actually subscribe to what we would call an e-journals package. So within Science Direct, we have probably about 20 to 25 electronic journals that we get as an entire e-journals package. Then we can make those readily available to you all as students. What does that mean? It means that when I am looking at electronic journal subscriptions, often what I have to do is drill down to the e-journal package level, get in through an administrative login, and look for usage statistics from the e-journals through Science Direct, from other e-journals through another e-journals package that we have that's from Taylor and Francis. I'm going to show you that one in just a second as well. And I have to look for something called total retrievals, total full text retrievals. Then I have to go back and I do a calculation of how much it cost per full text retrieval. So depending upon the popularity of an electronic journal and how much it's actually used in classes, if it's required reading for a SLIM class, for example, or if it's something that people are using in research, I might have an electronic journal that costs as little as 50 cents per full text retrieval. That's really cheap. If it is a journal that's pretty expensive, though, and if it actually isn't being used very much, which can happen in different disciplines, the cost might be $25 per full text access, or $30, or $50, or $100. I have this on my mind right now because one of my responsibilities is to do a periodic review of all of our electronic journal subscriptions that we have through e-journals packages, plus our print and electronic journals that we subscribe to through EBSCO. And if any of you are currently working in libraries, you might be familiar with EBSCO, also EBSCO hosts, but EBSCO is a vendor of e-journals as well as print journals. And I literally go in per subscription year, which is usually on a calendar year, and I do a calculation of full text cost per full text retrieval for every single electronic journal. I am just now finishing our fourth review of print and electronic journals, and I've done this now for the calendar year of 2018. So I've done it since 2016, which is good because now I have a three-year comparison of e-journal costs and costs per full text retrieval for 2016, 2017, and now for 2018. And we can see if we're finding any patterns in usage, in spikes of usage, and so forth. So I thought that it might be kind of interesting for you all to see what that looks like behind the scenes. And I'm going to switch now to an Excel spreadsheet that I generated. So are you all seeing an Excel spreadsheet now? Okay, great. I can see that. That's awesome. So I mentioned that I had just now pretty much finished my review for 2018 of electronic journal subscriptions across the board. We have a system, or I should say there is a system out there that's called Counter Compliance Statistics. And Counter is actually a nationally recognized standard of usage statistics. Counter 4 has been used for a long time. Actually, the counter system is now moving into counter 5, and I actually need to learn a little bit more about what the differences are. So these are actually still counter 4 statistics. So when you're dealing with usage statistics behind the scenes, you usually will log into a vendor such as EBSCOhost, or in this case, this is actually Taylor and Francis that I did, and we look at something called Journal Report 1. So this would, it says R4, but actually this would be JR1, Journal Report 1. Journal Report 1 is a counter compliance statistic. And that simply means that if I do a JR1 report for any type of eJournal package or any type of vendor for full text retrievals, I'm going to get the same information according to counter compliance statistics. So it will be standardized. So JR1 basically stands for full text retrievals of articles. So I thought you might enjoy seeing this. So this is actually a series of electronic journals that we subscribe to through Taylor and Francis. And with Taylor and Francis, what I did was, we have a calendar year subscription to eJournals through Taylor and Francis. So I ran this for the calendar year of 2018, as you can see from the period covered by report. And I actually resorted this for you all because I thought you might get a kick out of this. So with the Taylor and Francis journals, we actually have quite a few that are library and information science journals. But I resorted this because I thought you might be interested in seeing the most popular journals in terms of full text retrievals. So it looks like in the calendar year of 2018, our Taylor and Francis e-journals were actually retrieved in terms of full text retrievals 4,105 times. Notice over here too, it tends to break down the retrievals into HTML full text and PDF full text, and then this total is actually the two combined. The reason that it breaks this down is that sometimes when you display a journal article on your screen, you'll get the HTML full text first, and then there might be a little icon toward the top of the screen that you can click on for the PDF full text. So that's why sometimes we see that broken down into HTML and PDF. So I thought you might enjoy seeing this. The most popular journal in terms of full text retrievals from Taylor and Francis for 2018 wasn't an information science journal. It was a journal for art therapy. And remember, I mentioned counselor education. So art therapy is actually one of the programs in counselor education, one of the others that I work with. And I mentioned that the students that are in counselor education, including art therapy, are not physically in the William Allen White Library either. They're in this other building off campus. So it stands to reason that they wouldn't necessarily be able to come into the library and look for journals in print. So that's why that one probably is one of the most popular ones. However, running a close second, I'm going to scroll down here so you can see these better, is a library and information science journal, cataloging and classification quarterly, 549 full text retrievals in 2018, followed by Journal of Library Administration, Public Library Quarterly, Collection Management, and on down the line until we get to science and technology libraries. Then we pick up another non-library and information science journal, and then we pick up again with another one, Serials Review. I just think this stuff is fascinating. I have really enjoyed getting into it. Now, Dr. Smith will back me up on this. I'm sure that usage statistics are not the only measurement of complete use of ebooks and e-journals in particular. It is one metric. It is one way of measuring use, but it does not tell the full story. So I mentioned just a few seconds ago that I had e-journal usage statistics for our full text retrievals going back to 2016. And that's the first year that we really started to get into this a little bit more. I'm doing that on purpose because I want our librarians, because we're all going to review this together, I want our librarians to be able to compare 3 years worth of data, because we may well find that one particular e-journal was really used heavily in 2016, and then maybe the usage dropped in 2017, and then maybe it picked up a little bit again in 2018. That can mean a lot of things, and it doesn't mean that that one needs to be on the chopping block just because the usage might have dropped a little bit. We have to dig down a little bit further. So in the case of Slim, what I may do is dig back into previous semesters when different classes were offered. I might look at some patterns there, and then I might wind up saying, okay, I know why the usage dropped for this particular journal, because I know this journal is used in this class, and this particular class was not offered in a specific semester. So you have to keep trends. You want to do longitudinal data and basically keep those trends. At the same time, though, if we find that we have an e-journal that is tremendously expensive, and many of them are, and we find over the course of, say, 3 years that the usage really is dropping, that might be kind of a warning sign for us that that e-journal is not being used in a particular curriculum. Maybe the students and faculty don't know about it, and maybe we need to do a better job of educating them. Or it could mean that that specific e-journal is no longer relevant for that department's curriculum and research needs. It still means that we have to open up that conversation, though, and that's why we take our jobs as liaisons to different departments so seriously. So if any of you are working, or if you're interested in working in academic libraries, you really have to know your department. You've got to ask a lot of questions and know what's going on. In a public library, same thing. You've got to know your community. What do they have access to in terms of technology? What are they comfortable using? And how are you going to adapt that accordingly? I'm going to pause at this point and see if there are any questions right now before I go on.
Are there questions? Yes, good.
I'm just kind of wondering, looking at your numbers, what would be, is there a certain number that you would look at and say, oh, this is really good, it's really high, and then there's ones that you're looking at and like, well, this only has 113, so it might not be worth keeping.
Dr. Smith, I apologize. Can you get a little bit closer to the microphone and relay that question? And I may have the students do that as well. It's just far enough away that I'm not catching all of it.
Yeah,
Thank
sorry.
you.
The question
That's
was. I was thinking,
Sorry.
That was a clever question. That was a good question.
The numbers,
Oh, right.
or, I mean, obviously the art therapy gets used quite a bit, but is that, I mean, looking at that number, it looks like a good number.
Right.
Is there a bad number?
The question,
Okay.
Cynthia, was, are there good numbers and bad numbers? What number would be a cutoff for you? And
Ooh.
how would you determine that?
Oh, wow, that is a great question. Thank you so much for asking that, and thank you. I apologize that I had to have that repeated. So in terms of usage statistics with numbers, we can't really say at this point that there's a good number versus a bad number, and I'll tell you why. Because one thing that's not reflected on this sheet is the actual cost per e-journal, or the total cost of the e-journals package. So what does that mean? It means that I might have an electronic journal that is $2,000. That's not unusual. $2,000 for a subscription per calendar year. So that sounds like a really high number in terms of cost. But if that e-journal is being accessed and it looks like the cost is pretty reasonable, then I can more easily justify that $2,000 per cost of the e-journal. In contrast, we might have some e-journals that are not tremendously expensive, but they just aren't being accessed very much, and so that usage, that cost for full text retrieval is going to go up accordingly. A very, very rough number that we use is a cutoff point of about $25 to $30 per full text retrieval. That sounds kind of high, but what we do is we say, if we have an e-journal that has a pretty consistent cost over a 3-year span of about $25 to $30 per full text retrieval, is that still going to be cheaper to subscribe to that e-journal than dealing with the time issue and the people factor of doing interlibrary loan, because that would be our other option. If we cancel the e-journal, then the access to the current issues would only be available through interlibrary loan. And how much is that going to cost? So roughly about $25 to $30 in terms of full text retrievals, but that can also be kind of a moving target. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, that's great. And Cynthia, so
Awesome.
is our cost per, now, I also have to be careful. I know you're all dying to say exactly how much does this journal cost, and a lot of that is actually really proprietary information.
Yes, it is. It is. It is. Yeah, yes. I wish that I could show you some of those costs. Unfortunately, I cannot do that. However, I can tell you all that we love Slim for a lot of different reasons. And one of the reasons that we do is that it's always been really easy for me to go back to my dean and show her the full text retrievals of our library and information science journals, because you all cost maybe about 30 to 50 cents per full text retrieval. You're cheap. You're not cheap, but you know what I mean. It is really great because I've been able to show some really good numbers to my dean. And because of that, Dr. Smith already knows about this, but because our numbers have been so good, and I've been able to go back and say, I know these journals are being used by SLIM students and SLIM faculty. Here are the numbers. We have cohort groups, we have distance education programs, we have to continue to provide this access. We have been able to add, and we're working on the finer details right now, but hopefully sometime in the summer, we're going to be adding an expanded library and information science journals package through Taylor and Francis, and it's probably going to give you all access to about 30 to 35 additional journals. So I'm pretty happy about that. So good job.
I just have a quick question here. Is our cost per interlibrary loan for a journal article about $25 to $30? Is that?
It can be. It can be. If you have an article that's pretty easily accessible through interlibrary loan, the cost factor in terms of the time and actually obtaining the journal article is not going to be that high. The problem that we run into is if we have journals that are a little bit more obscure and they're not owned by as many institutions. And when we have that happen, we actually use a system behind the scenes that's called Reprints Desk. And this is something that we don't really, we don't advertise it because it's really more of a behind the scenes thing. Basically, Reprints Desk provides very quick turnaround access if somebody needs a journal article like as an absolute emergency, or if it's something that's a little bit more obscure. The trade-off on that is that Reprints Desk is a heck of a lot more expensive. That's when you're looking more at about $30 to $35 per retrieval for that. So it all kind of balances out, I think, in the end. Interlibrary loan is great, but you do have to allow for that turnaround time, as you all know.
Okay, I'm just going to say I can see some people's toes curling a little when they're thinking, my goodness, $35 to give somebody one article.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And when I say that for a cost for interlibrary loan or Reprints Desk, what I'm talking about is, quite frankly, a lot of cost on subscribing to a service, because we actually subscribe to Reprints Desk as an actual service. And again, the cost factor in that has a lot to do with people, you know, how much you're paying somebody per hour to work on requests, and then how long it takes. So yeah, information definitely is a commodity.
Yep. Gloria, you have a question.
What's the difference price-wise between publications that have limited access against publications that have unlimited access?
Okay. Can you talk, and this is really an ebook question, Cynthia, but I was actually quite surprised when you told me, but can you give us some examples of the difference in price between a one user, a 3 user, or an unlimited user license?
Sure, absolutely. To back up a little bit to kind of lead into that question, and again, Dr. Smith knows about this because I spoke recently to the SLIM faculty about this. Our library is really making a commitment to move much more toward ebook access, kind of starting with SLIM as a pilot project because we know you all are good users. We have distance education programs and so forth. So what we're doing right now is if a SLIM faculty member sends me a request for an ebook, I look first on a system that we have called Gobi, G-O-B-I. Some of you might be familiar with that. Gobi is a way of ordering books, both print and electronic, but it does a lot more. Gobi, now actually I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to show you something here. Let's get in here. Let's stop that for just a sec. Bear with me. Here we go. Okay. And I am going to go back.
Just while you're doing that, Cynthia, I'm going to make the
Yes.
point that have you noticed how many different software programs Cynthia is talking about using in the scope of her daily job?
Yes.
That I think is something that's quite, that we don't quite realize how many different software tools she's having to use to accomplish what she's doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Particularly when you talk to the big vendors, it's use my system and one-click ordering and off you go. And that's true. You can buy books from Taylor and Francis. You can buy books from, I just completely forgot the name of the people that do all the schools. Anyway.
Yeah.
But if you need to understand what you're buying, if you actually want to do these other things, and then if you're dealing with multiple different sets of access, and Cynthia has actually glossed over the fact that dealing with off-campus access for all these electronic things is an added layer of nightmareness.
Yes.
But anyway, sorry, thanks.
No, Dr. Smith, I cannot emphasize that or underscore that enough. In fact, we have one person, Jessica Russell, who's also a SLIM graduate. Jessica's title is E-Resources Manager, and she does a lot of other things too, but a lot of her time is spent in dealing with these very issues that Dr. Smith was just mentioning, making sure that the access to all of our databases and ebooks and e-journals are working. And when they don't work off campus, and you probably have all had that situation in which they don't work, we have to do this troubleshooting from our end to figure out, is it the vendor? Is it the internet access? Is it an ad blocker? What is going on here? So it's fantastic to be able to access a lot of information electronically, but it adds a lot of layers of technology and a lot of layers of complexity as a result. Can you all see my screen again back on the online searching book? Okay, so I wanted to go back to that question on determining cost. And I'm going to use this one as an example. So, again, when actually any faculty member besides SLIM sends a request to me and wants that book to be available as an ebook, I mentioned Gobi. I actually go into Gobi first, which I can do from my end as a librarian. And I look to see, number one, is that book available as an ebook? Number two, is it available specifically as an EBSCOhost ebook? And there's a reason that I do that. Contracts. We have to sign contracts and license agreements with all of our different vendors to ensure that we're not providing access to people who shouldn't have access to that, and that it's restricted to ESU students and faculty and staff. With EBSCOhost, EBSCOhost ebooks, we actually have a contract on file already with them. And that makes life very, very easy, because if I find something that's available as an EBSCOhost ebook, we can go ahead, we can order it, and that record and that ebook can be imported into our system that you're looking at right now just in a matter of seconds. The price factor is what we do have to look at. So if a book is available as an EBSCOhost ebook, for like one user or three users, like three concurrent users, that's going to be a little bit cheaper. If a book is available for what is called unlimited access, that is going to be more expensive concurrently. We're looking at one right now that's an EBSCOhost ebook that has unlimited access, and it's $120, which, you know, in the whole grand scheme of things doesn't really sound like that much. But the more unlimited your users are with ebooks, the higher the cost is going to be for ebooks. E-journals, again, can be tremendously expensive because, again, you're paying for that access. One thing to keep in mind, too, with ebooks and with e-journals is the idea of perpetual access. Perpetual access is not guaranteed. So here's the kicker. If you have a print book, you have it, right? Unless your library weeds it or unless you wind up selling it or giving it away, it's there in a tangible format and it's yours. Same thing with a print magazine or a print journal. Electronic access is a little bit more slippery. If you don't have anything in a license agreement that talks about perpetual access, that could mean that you pay one cost perhaps for an ebook, and then you might wind up paying a lesser cost per year for continued access to that ebook. So you're still paying for that access. Not necessarily the $120 per year, but you might still be paying a little bit of money per year for access to that ebook or access to that e-journals collection. If you stop paying for e-journals, unless you have a contract that says that you have ownership of archived issues of that e-journal or that e-journal collection, the whole thing is going to go away. Now, some of ours do have archives, so we can get access to the archives electronically. We just might not have access to the current issues if we cancel that subscription. So that's something else you have to keep in mind, access versus ownership. Other questions that are out there, because I'm sure that you still have some, or other areas that, Dr. Smith, that you would like me to go over that I haven't yet?
Well, I'm going to press you a little on the how much does an ebook cost. So unlimited access might be $120. What would be a single user ebook? What's a reasonable amount that you're seeing there?
Okay, for that specific example that I gave, the $120 would be for unlimited access, and I want to say it was like about $50 or $60 for one user.
Okay, so there's a big difference, but if it's something that is going to get an enormous amount of use,
exactly.
The library is nothing if 8 sections a year are going to use collection development. So it's a deal. Are there other questions at the moment? Yes, here's one.
Oh, good.
Okay.
I'll try to shout it. Is Emporia part of a consortium?
Oh, okay. Are we part of a consortium? Thank you for asking that, because we haven't talked about that yet. We used to do a lot more consortial subscription to electronic databases, not ebooks, but electronic databases a number of years ago. In fact, I chaired something called the Regents Libraries Database Consortium for the Regents Libraries here in Kansas for a couple of years, a number of years ago. And we used to be able, as Kansas Regents institution like University of Kansas, Kansas State, and us, we used to actually get better deals through vendors by doing consortial subscriptions to large databases. That's not necessarily happening anymore with databases, at least on what we are finding. We have a few legacy databases that we still do with the other Kansas Regents libraries for consortial subscriptions. But we find now that vendors are increasingly less likely to negotiate that because it's kind of a pain for them. It's great for us, but it's not as advantageous for them. Now, many states have more of like a statewide consortium of databases. We have in Kansas, the Kansas State Library that I mentioned before. The Kansas State Library actually offers statewide access to a number of rather general databases for public libraries and also for academic libraries. We have access to those, but those statewide databases do not begin to fill the need of what we have with our students and faculty. So we supplement those with a lot of individual subscriptions to databases. So we don't do as much anymore with consortiums. It would be kind of nice if we could, but it just doesn't work in terms of the cost effectiveness.
And Cynthia, is that because the vendors are really wanting to deal with you individually?
Yeah, yeah. They would rather deal with individual libraries. And I mean, it's not, I don't know, I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference in terms of the cost, but I think that they would rather be dealing with the individual libraries, which actually brings up something else. Sometimes I get asked from SLIM students, so what does a specific database cost? What's the flat cost for the Library and Information Science database? It is just like buying a house or buying a car. There's no set cost. There's so many different factors that you wind up negotiating. A lot of cost for academic libraries and databases depends on what's called the FTE, or the full-time equivalent enrollment of your student population. Some of it depends, not as much anymore, but it used to also make a difference if you were a community college as opposed to a 4-year institution or a 6-year or a doctoral granting institution. They don't do that as much anymore, though. But I guarantee you that what we pay for a database isn't going to be the same as another library. If you negotiate a multi-year contract or a multi-year agreement, you might get a certain discount for, 3 years or 5 years. So it's very much of a moving target.
Are there other questions?
I have a short one. Thank you, this is so informative. Recently, our dean encouraged us to register more students for a law information class because the database is so expensive. Would you say that particular one is one of the most expensive ones?
Okay. And I apologize again, I did not hear all of that question. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
Our dean was encouraging us to have our students sign up for a particular class because the journal is so expensive. It's the legal information class, and it's a law journal. Would you say that's one of the most expensive ones that we have?
Which one is that?
I don't know the title of it, but it was
Okay.
interesting that we have such an expensive journal, and yet we're not getting enough students for this particular class who might use it. But anyway, I was just wondering if you knew if that was the most expensive one, but I imagine you have many expensive ones. So
yeah. Actually, I tell you what I find, the price of journals, both print and electronic journals, sometimes it depends upon the publisher as much as anything else. And again, it can depend upon the discipline. I'll give you a good example. So probably about 2 years ago, we were subscribing to Science, the weekly, kind of a weekly journal slash publication. And we switched over to the online version of Science. That cost was quite a bit more expensive than the print Science subscription was, but the trade-off on that was, with the online version of Science, we're getting much more than just articles. We're getting a lot of interactive things, like interactive lesson plans that science teachers can use, videos, a lot of different things. So it kind of depends upon the journal, and if they are actually augmenting anything with an electronic version in particular, if there's more than that you're getting just the issues themselves. So again, there's just so many different factors.
Oh, yeah, so many variables.
Yeah.
Such good information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, Cynthia, you said at the beginning you wanted to talk a little about open
Yes.
resources.
Yes. So you all may be familiar with the concept of OER, Open Educational Resources. Essentially, there have been around for actually quite a long period of time the idea of open access journals. And open access journals are simply that. They're generally most of the time pretty freely available online. You don't pay a subscription or anything to them. And more open access journals are being more accepted as peer-reviewed publications. That's also kind of a trade-off too. If you are in an institution and you're a faculty member in an academic institution, you have to publish. You do research and you have to publish. And not only do you have to publish, often to be eligible for tenure and promotion, and then also for your annual evaluations, you might need to show that you're publishing in recognized journals in your discipline or your field of study. And open access journals may not actually be that recognized by a tenure and promotion committee or by a department. So that's been kind of an uphill battle. Now, flip side of that, cost of journals, and also cost of textbooks, which of course, you know, you all are very much aware of. So Emporia State has been pushing, and I see this happening more and more, toward encouraging faculty to look toward perhaps freely available open educational resources, such as open access textbooks. Now, again, the flip side on that is you don't want to just choose a textbook just because it's free. You want something that's been vetted, that's of scholarly quality, of scholarly merit, that the students will actually benefit from. So, and that's something that we're starting to look at more and more in terms of the academic library. One thing that we're doing is, and you, Dr. Smith, you'll remember this from our SLIM faculty meeting, we are looking more toward ebooks that are published, say, by ALA editions, because there are indeed a lot of ebooks that are published by ALA editions that might also concurrently be used as textbooks in the SLIM courses. And what we're doing now is kind of taking it on a case-by-case basis, but maybe being able to say to some SLIM faculty, well, let's look. Let's see if we can find a textbook that you'd be using for a SLIM course. Let's see if it's available through EBSCOhost, since we have the contract for that. And let's see what the cost is for unlimited access. And maybe we can go ahead and get that, and then we can make that available to your students. That's not exactly OER because the library is paying for that, but it's getting closer and closer to being able to provide that information that you need without you all having to pay a tremendous price. So I think the idea of OERs is going to get more and more interesting in the next few years. So if you're ever familiar with that, that's a good research project.
But of course, there are so many questions around it. We're not going to those right this minute. The other thing, can you talk about our institutional repository?
Sure. So, and let me switch over to that. And that is actually a very good segue. I'm going to go back to the library's web page. So actually, I'm going to back up for just a second because this is a great part of an institutional repository. So a lot of you may have found that if you find a citation for a journal article,
yeah, excuse me.
And yes,
what we're seeing in your on the library.
Yes, what are you seeing?
The very first thing that shows up are your ads for your trial subscriptions. There you are, Harvard Business Review. Can you talk for a second about your trial subscriptions and what you're doing?
Oh, I would love to do that, and then we'll go to the institutional repository. Absolutely. Yes, so you see our slideshow that's kind of going on. Let's do this again. Okay, so we have two trials going on right now for ebooks, and these actually are two collections that are available through EBSCOhost as EBSCOhost ebooks. So we haven't actually bought these yet, but they are on trial through April 30th of 2019, so basically through the end of April. And if I go over here to databases, we would love for you all to try these out. I've sent information to the SLIM faculty about these, but this is a good plug for these as well. So one of the trial databases that we have is called Academic Subscription Collection. And what you can do with this one, it's actually just sort of a large collection of ebooks that are indeed a little bit more academic in detail. So I did this kind of quickly, but you notice when I clicked on the academic subscription collection, I clicked on ebooks up here toward the top. And the reason I did that is that I had found that this is the easiest way of browsing what is in this ebook collection. So you can see they have fiction, education, health and medicine, reference, social sciences. And if we click on any of these, that one looks kind of interesting. This is going to look kind of familiar from what we've seen before. I believe this is the case for all of the ebooks in these collections, Dr. Smith. I believe all of these have a concurrent user level of unlimited user access because we are paying for the actual ebook. But if I should say, if we subscribe to this resource, we would actually be subscribing to the entire ebook collection for an academic collection. So you might want to check that out. And the other one, if any of you are interested in more of the business perspective, business point of view, this is also the one that we have on trial. Again, EBSCOhost ebooks. These are perfect for business, but they overlap into management issues. And these are ebooks that are published by Harvard Business Press. And these are going to work the very same way. And so this is a good example of, just a second here, there we go. These are good examples, again, of ebooks that are going to be a little bit more, we can do a view all, again, that are more business related, but there's also going to be a lot of good ones here that I think would also relate to management issues, managing a library. This is one that I need to read, tips, tools, and exercises for making better data visualizations. So we would actually really encourage you all. You saw how I got to that on the A to Z databases list, and I just looked over here to the right-hand side. We will be looking at, again, usage statistics at the end of April for these two ebook collections, and then doing some evaluating to see if that's something that we could possibly subscribe to in the next fiscal year. So absolutely take a look at those. I'm glad you mentioned those.
And so let me just ask a question here. Is this something that publishers are quite happy to do? They'll give you unlimited access for a month to try them out.
Actually, I think that is more unlimited access for the ebook collection as opposed to the trial period. Now, don't quote me on that, but my thought and what I'm seeing is if we, as a library, were subscribing to something as a larger ebook collection, then I think it's far more likely that those books within that ebook collection are going to have unlimited access as opposed to the ones that we buy one book at a time and then we have to choose that level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think they're more inclined to do that because you're saying that you're subscribing to this entire collection, so they're just going to open that up. Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that.
Okay.
So I am going to, absolutely.
One of the things we've talked about is it's no good having a fabulous collection if nobody knows it's there. But
yeah, that's exactly it.
Of even sampling the interest before you even spend money.
Exactly. And that's why we do like to do trials of those. Yeah. So I would, check out those two ebook collections. And if any of you just want to email me directly on what you think, I would really welcome that because that's, again, feedback that I can take to my dean. So I did go back to the library's webpage because we mentioned something called an institutional repository, which is on this button. And this is something that you're going to find at actually quite a few academic institutions, maybe managed by a library or managed by an archives collection or special collections. An institutional repository is a way, quite literally, of saving information from that specific institution, but then also making it more freely available to anybody else who would like access to that information. And a good example of that is if you're ever looking for the PDF full text of a dissertation or a thesis that somebody wrote at another institution, if that institution has some type of institutional repository, the likelihood is pretty great that the PDF copy of that dissertation or thesis has been placed in that institutional repository. Again, more in terms of open access so that you can actually find that. But it kind of goes beyond that. Often in institutional repositories, faculty who write articles might go ahead and put in something called a preprint of an article. So a preprint can be like a proof of an article before it's actually published online or in print officially, but it can still be used. And sometimes if you're looking for a copy of an article and you don't have time for interlibrary loan and it's not readily accessible in a database, you might just go on to something like Google Scholar. I use that quite a bit. And you might be able to find the full text of that article in PDF in an institutional repository. This is the way that ours works. We call it eCirc, Emporia State Institutional Repository Collection. It is not complete. We are working on kind of what we want to do with the future of it in terms of an institutional repository, but you can see that we have a community for the School of Library and Information Management. And we have SLIM Research, but what we've been doing in here too is actually placing the PDFs of dissertations that SLIM PhD students have written. And you can easily, you can see I'm not really logged into anything. I can pull up the PDF of that dissertation. And there it is right there. And that, again, is what a lot of institutional repositories are used for. They, again, can be places where faculty members, graduate students, even undergraduate students, as they do research, write articles, or perhaps other projects, they can actually place them in this repository, and then again, they are freely available through that open access in terms of just being able to share that information and then basically help a community at large. So that is what ours looks like. And like I said, ours is not nearly as robust as other ones are at different universities, but that's something you can always get access to at any time.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
Are there other questions you have? Things you're dying to know?
Oh.
Cynthia, is there anything else that you're dying to share with us?
I can't think of anything right now. I hope that what I've been able to show you all tonight is the fact that, again, with electronic collection development and online collection management, that it is a lot more complex than I think a lot of people have a chance to think about, certainly in terms of usage statistics, access to information, and so forth. But at the same time, I don't see it going away. And I think, again, whatever you all specialize in, whatever library you happen to go into, again, the big thing is being aware of your community needs, because you may have a community that prefers print for a lot of different reasons. You may have a community that needs to go totally online. They're more comfortable with that. Whatever it is, just think about what their needs are and then kind of be prepared to go with that accordingly, but also be flexible. So I hope this has helped. And like I said, please, please contact me if you have any questions. That's what I'm here for.
I do have one question.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, have a great rest of the evening and a great day tomorrow with your class.
No, thank you, thank you. No, it's about materials. So,
okay, I will.
I'm sorry, I was going to say.
Oh, I was going to say, I'll go ahead and end this, and then, like I said, Dr. Smith, I will send you then the link to the YouTube video so you can put it in Canvas.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for your time.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Take care.
Turn this off.